Personally, today I will be presenting the topic in Journal Club. The name topic is Vagicovaginal fistula. Here is the anatomy of the female pelvis. We can appreciate the pelvic structures like bladder, uterus, and rectum. They are closely correlated with each other, and they are prone to damage during surgery of the other organ. This is an axial section. This is also showing the close correlation of bladder and vagina, and this is the vascular supply of uterus, and there is we can see the uterine artery which is turned from lateral to medial and in distal part, and it is the proximity that we the during surgery the ligation of ureter as occurred during ligation of uterine artery. The etiology of vagicovaginal fistula is there are difference in percentages in developed and developing world. In development world, this occurs most commonly during surgery like hysterectomy, anti-continence surgery, surgical prolapse surgery, endoscopic bladder surgery, rectal surgeries, and vascular surgeries. External trauma like pelvic fractures or penetrating injuries. Pathological, it could be occurred during malignancies and infections like tuberculosis of genitourinary TB or pelvic inflammatory disease. Radiation therapy is also a common factor in development of vagicovaginal fistula. It can be a congenital, and an obstructed cause is more common in developing world like labor, obstructed labor, forceps delivery, and C-sections. And if the antenatal period is gone untested or patient didn't follow up during his antenatal period, then this is more prone, the chances of vagicovaginal fistula increase. It is a disease which has beyond uh, disease related impact. It has also social impact, psychological aspect, relational aspects, and financial aspects. Social isolation, patient may go in social isolation due to continent disturbance and catheterization, the smell of urine, it goes poor, gives poor self-image, bad hygiene. The sexual dysfunction and hygiene issue may cause separation or divorce. Cost of incontinence like catheters and devices, use of pads and diapers, and sexual dysfunctions.
So, Dr. Kamal, how does this patient commonly present? Dr. Kamal.
With the continuous urinary leakage
Okay,
or
what
vagina.
else?
Or could be the cyclic hematuria too also.
Or
Yes, sir.
और
Continuous urinary leakage,
incontinence
cyclic
एक
hematuria.
कंप्लेन है, इसके अलावा यूजली कैसे प्रेजेंट करता है? इमीडिएट पोस्ट ऑफ डॉक्टर स्पैन.
Sir, can you repeat the question?
How this patient present? Patient with vagicovaginal fistula or genitourinary fistula, how they present? How they come to clinical picture?
Sir, the usual complaint is continuous urinary leakage,
Okay. What else?
recurrent UTIs.
How they present in the early postoperative period? Dr. Osama?
If there is any drain, there is increased drain output.
Okay.
That is urine.
What else? Dr. Fahad? You all have done emergencies and you commonly see these patients come into ER.
Sir, mostly because of some C-section, and after that they presented with the with the urinary incontinence most of the time.
Yes, incontinence is the most common presentation, but there are other presentations as well. For example, a working drain or yes, ileus, discharge from wound, hematuria, vaginal discharge. These are all presentations of vesicovaginal fistula in the early postoperative period. So if there is a patient who recently had gynecological surgery and she comes to you with these complaints, you have to suspect a vesicovaginal fistula or a uteric fistula. Okay.
In clinical presentation is early postoperative period is abdominal distension, prolonged ileus or discharge from wound, hematuria, and discharge from leakage from the vagina. And late it can be incontinence. Nature of incontinence give a clue of possible site of fistula, like if during voiding or continuous with normal voiding or cyclical.
So, Dr. Larif, if a patient complains of incontinence with voiding, when she voids, she leaks. What does that mean?
Uretrovaginal fistula.
Good.
And continuous like vesico-vaginal. Continuous with a normal voiding uretrovaginal communication.
Good.
I don't know about cyclic.
Monthly, she bleeds and she leaks.
It could be upper uretrovesical fistula, uretrus and vesical.
Uterus and vagina.
Uterus.
Right. So, if you take close history, you can find out the site of fistula with history only. Okay. So, how you examine these patients? Dr. Larif again. What important things you would like to note?
Sir, I'll like to examine the perineum.
Okay. Direct perineum. Abdomen में कुछ नहीं देखना.
Sir, abdominal previous surgical scars.
Scars.
And if the scar is healed or it's still leaking the urine. And then perineal examination, I'd like to see the urethra and vaginal opening if there is any leak on that position. And then I like to ask the patient to cough and then see if
Why
there's...
cough? You are looking for stress incontinence or you are looking...
Sir, if the bladder is empty or there is minimal volume, the patient might leak on coughing.
Okay. What else? Dr.
Sir,
Faiz?
is there any visible visible leak on that? And then I'll ask the patient to stand and perform a Marshall Body test.
Dr. Faiz, can you add anything? Clinical examination of a patient who came to you with leak, urine leak from vagina.
I will examine his clothes.
Yes, good.
This will give
Any patient with incontinence, first thing to see is clothes. Are they wet or they are not wet? Is she using diapers or she is not lifted? What else? Dr. Islam?
First of all, I will start from the, if I'm in emergency, start from the physical examination, general physical examination. And then from systemic, from abdominal, as already discussed, is there any previous surgical scar marker? And then we'll move towards the perineal. From there, generally look to see the clothes, and then vaginal.
What do you mean by general look?
Clothes are dry or wet.
Fine. What else? Dr. Umair?
So we will examine the abdomen first and
आवाज नहीं
yes.
आवाज नहीं है डॉक्टर उसामा
We should also do the pervaginal examination and to see that if there is
Doctor
any
want to see the skin
overlying skin.
of the perineum. Is it
Yes.
important?
Yes.
She's been swelling. Her clothes are wet. It may have infection. It may have erythema. Okay. How you do vaginal examination?
So by speculum,
By
and
simple fact.
we should I think also do the DRE as well.
Next.
On clinical examination, first of all, we can see any scar mark on abdomen, trouser or dress if it is dry or wet. If patient is using diaper or any pads or any other things to keep herself dry. In intrahiatus, we can see skin, any sign of excoriation, erythema, signs of inflammation, any visible leakage, discharge, and size of fistula or atrophy, and if any visible defect is there. We can do the swab test and neurologic examination. This is the pervaginal view of our rectovaginal fistula. You can see the edematous area and induration at the side of fistula. In diagnostic workup, the first good history and clinical examination. This is very important, and with good history and clinical examination, we can almost confirm or identify the nature and site of the vesicovaginal fistula. In diagnostic workup, goal is to define the characteristic of fistula to guide management. In non-invasive testing, there is PAIR test to see any leakage. We can use contrast or dyes to identify the leakage. And cystogram, in cystogram we can identify the fistula on site of leakage, bladder capacity, and side of fistula and its relation with uteric orifice. If there is any VUR, CT scan, contrast, most important, and MRI. Invasive tests are cystoscopy and antegrade retrograde ureterogram.
So, Dr. Sharik, how would you perform a cystogram for a patient who has suspected VVS?
I will first make sure that he has a negative urine culture. She has a negative urine culture, and then put a catheter and instill around 100 ml of contrast and take images in the voiding phase as well.
Voiding phase?
Filling and voiding phase as well to see any.
Why voiding phase? Will you see fistula during filling, or you would see in voiding?
I want to see any bladder posterior wall defect as well in cases of.
Will that be visible in filling or voiding?
In cases of like post hysterectomy cases, there may be a separate bladder wall defect.
You want to see a fistula with bladder. Will you look for it during the filling of the bladder or during voiding?
I want to see in both.
And which image will you take? In which orientation?
In lateral.
And if you request a CT scan, Dr. Pasca, what you will tell your radiologist? you are looking for a BVF. Dr. Faiz, you are requesting a CT scan for suspected VBF. Which type of images you want to have? Which phase of CT scan you want to have?
In the delayed phase, we can appreciate the leakage.
Okay. We will request your radiologist to do delayed images. So, next.
This is an image showing, it is the image of cystogram, that is lateral image, and showing the communication between bladder and vagina. This is another image of CT contrast, and we can see the contrast going in vagina from the communication between vagina and bladder.
Dr. Zafar, which one is vagina and which one is bladder? Dr. Zafarullah. Zafarullah. Which one is bladder?
Zafarullah से पूछ रहे हैं.
Which is bladder?
One is on the right side and one is on the left side. Which one is the bladder?
On the right side, one is bladder.
The one near the pubic symphysis is bladder.
Yes.
Right.
So we need to know that what we are looking for when we are getting a cystogram done. So what are the shortcomings? That we only fill 100 cc, 20 cc, 50 cc, and then we evaluate that there is no leakage and we come out. You have to fill it properly, number one. You have to take the lateral image, number two. And three is gold standard for diagnosis is CT cystogram. Only cystogram with delayed images won't help the cause, because maybe you won't find that defect. Upar se kidney se aa raha hai contrast, so you can miss that. So, but you have to get a CT cystogram. You fill the bladder with the contrast and then get a CT scan image. So that is very helpful rather than a plain image. So you should be having that in your mind.
This is an axial section of CT scan that is showing communication between bladder and vagina. Cystoscopy does
Can you go back to the previous slide? So, this is vagina.
No, sir, uterus. Diagnostic workup continues in cystoscopy. It is the examination under anesthesia. We can appreciate the site of fistula and size of fistula, if it is small or large, margins of fistula, its relation with ureteric orifice. If there is a history of malignancy, the biopsy of the tract we can get. We can also done antegrade or retrograde ureterogram, and if there is ureterovaginal fistula, then we can also done stenting at the same time. If there is more than one fistula, then we can also identify the more than one fistula on cystoscopy. This is the cystoscopic view of zygovaginal fistula. This is bladder, and there is defect and showing.
Dr. Zafarullah Baloch, can you explain these classification systems of vaginal fistula? This was your synopsis.
Zygovaginal fistula, we use Goh's classification to see that the relation of the fistula with the urethra, how it is close to the urethra and away from the urethra. And It is a relation to the ureters and size of the fistula. And
so there are basically 3 parameters you look for in GO classification.
yes.
What are the other classification systems available for evaluation of VVS? Dr. S. Dr. Mushtaq. There are 2 commonly used methods of classifying the VVS.
There is some Weldig classification. I don't exactly remember the whole classification.
Right.
There are 2 classification which we can use, the Walgic and Ghost classification. Ghost classification, it describes the relation of fistula with the incontinent mechanism of bladder. In type 1, the distal edge of fistula is more than 3.5 centimeter of external urethral orifice. Type 2, the distance become less, 2.5 to 3.5. In type 3, less than 1.5 or between 2.5, and in type 4 the distance is less than 1.5. The significance of this classification is the effect of surgery or disease on the continent mechanism. The more the fistula proximity with sphincter mechanism, there is more chance of incontinence or stress incontinence after the repair. Number fistula size less than 1.5 centimeter, 1.5 into 3 centimeter in C, and more than 3 centimeter. Vaginal scarring, grade 1, no mild fibrosis around the fistula. Type 2, moderate or severe fibrosis around the fistula, or 2 special consideration like circumferential fistula or complicated fistula, involvement of ureteric orifices. There is another classification which describes, categorize the fistula between simple and complex. In simple fistula, it is single fistula size less than 4 centimeter. Single or more than 1 fistula size any of more than 4 centimeter. Vesicovaginal fistula and a simple fistula closing mechanism, the continent mechanism is not involved, no circumferential defect, minimal tissue loss, ureters not involved, first attempt to repair. Complex, multiple fistula, rectovaginal, mixed fistula or cervical fistula, the closer mechanism involved, degree of scarring, circumferential defects, extensive tissue loss, intravaginal ureters, or failed previous repair, or fistula secondary to radiation. When it comes to the treatment, the principle of fistula management is, first, the patient nutrition status should be.
Dr. Naveed, can you go back to previous slide? I just want to know about what is the meaning of this closing mechanism not involved or closing mechanism involved?
Closing mechanism is continence mechanism.
The patient adequate nutrition status should be optimized, so the post-operative recovery and the status would be appropriate. It is difficult to get sterile cultures, but infections, if there is no preoperative infection, the chances of failure and post-operative infections are getting less. When we have repaired, then the urinary drainage should be unobstructed. And it is better to get a double drainage. And before going for surgery, first, the most important is you should rule out any malignancy. In treatment, general counseling, nutritional optimizations, psychological aspects, and social aspects. We will counsel the patient the success rate, chances of failure, prolonged catheterization, and chances of use adjuvant procedure on table, like using flaps or grafts. Nutritional optimization we can already discuss, and we should address the psychological aspects as well. We can take a psychologist on board, and social aspects we should take her family on board to provide support to patient.
So, Dr. Nazish, you have a patient who is planned to undergo fistula surgery. How will you counsel her? What important points you would like to mention to her?
First of all, I will counsel regarding his condition, that what she is having a condition. And after that, I will counsel the type of surgery I was going to perform on her. What are the expect? Can we go transabdominal? Can we go transvaginal? The aspects of the outcome of the surgery, that she will be on double drainage or the catheterization for a prolonged time, or the 14 days of the period. And after that, that it has poor outcome also, that she might go on the other various surgery. If that fails, the surgery can be failed. That's how I'm going to.
Dr. Naseem, would you like to add anything? Naseem.
I think she had summed it up. One thing, that is the chances of complication or need of multiple surgeries or chances of failed procedures are there, which need to be explained, and patient's expectations are to be explained.
Should there be any discussion about the function?
Sorry?
Post-operative function, sexual function, blood dysfunction, LUTs, possible incontinence. So there should be, because you are trying to control leak, that's fine. But doing surgery in this area will ultimately lead to other problems. There will be bladder symptoms post-operatively, there will be sexual dysfunction. She may get a short vagina, she may get a stenosis vagina. And this will also have impact on possible fertility in the future. So you have to consider all these things.
What do we mean by nutritional optimization? Anyone from the audience? Why is this so important before embarking upon surgery?
Dr. Ahmed? Why nutrition is important, especially for these patients with BVF?
So nutrition is important because post-operatively if the patient already undernourished, the healing will be very complicated. That's the number one. The other one actually will be during the surgery, we will not find any good landmarks or malnutrition area, edemas, inflammatory process, all of them should be subsided.
Dr. Abbas.
Regarding the counseling session before surgery, both the partners, husband and wife, counsel regarding the post-operatively, the sexual activity is being stopped for at least 3 months. So counsel both of them.
The husband should be included in the discussion if he is there. Next.
We will counsel the patient regarding outcomes of surgery. It can be 100% correct, or there may be chances of complication or recurrence. Impact on sexual function like vaginal shortening, stenosis, dyspareunia. Impact on infertility. The patient may fail to conceive due to scarring and the inflammatory process that will go on in his reproductive tract. Bladder dysfunction and lower leg tract symptoms. And in the this surgery, the most important, it's the most common symptom that we will encounter post-operative is stress incontinence, and use of grafts and flap that on table the decision can be taken.
One another thing which we are all forgetting in counseling session is that in female patients who have already operated multiple times, like multiple time bladder surgeries and other pelvic surgeries, the bladder tend to be small capacity. And on table, when we proceed for transabdominal surgery and we find the bladder small capacity, we need to take consent and counsel the patient and his husband for augmentation as well, pre-op. So this is also one of the important aspects in patients who have undergone multiple surgeries before.
There are two approaches for surgical management. One is vaginal, the other one is abdominal. Vaginal is usually approach obtained for small fistulas, and those are distally located and urethrovaginal fistula. Abdominal approach is usually taken for large fistula or proximal fistulas, post-radiation, failed vaginal approach, simultaneous bladder and uterus surgery, as Dr. Shiri mentioned, the use of any adjuvant procedure during surgery like augmentation or need of ureteric implantation, then we will go for abdominal approach. Timing, there is no consensus yet for timing of repair. If it is iatrogenic, some says as soon as you identify the defect, you should go for repair. If the cause is obstructed fistula like prolonged labor, then the 2 to 3 months date is taken, so the necrosis and inflammation that settled, and we will have the clean tissue planes during repair. In absence of infection, transvaginal approach is feasible within few weeks. And if it is the fistula is secondary to radiation, then there is recommendation to delay it for 10 to 12 months, so the necrosis and inflammation settled. Principles of surgical repair.
Thanks.
Adequate exposure, debridement of the devitalized tissue, removal of foreign body if any, careful dissection, watertight closure. The tissue we are approximating, it should be well vascularized, atraumatic handling of tissue. The repair should be tension free, multiple layer closure, good hemostasis. And the use of cautery should be avoided as much as possible. There is very less, but it is used very less, but it is recommended the conservative treatment for small fistulas that are less than 5 to 4 mm. We can use the catheter drainage and follow the patient if it could heal spontaneously. Vaginal approach suitable for small distal fistula and urethrovaginal fistula. Techniques are saucerization technique and Philip splitting technique. This is the schematic representation of surgery of physicovaginal fistula, transvaginal. We dissect the fistula tract and excise, and then we first repair the bladder in 2 layers, and overlying the vagina should repair. The line of suture should be perpendicular to each other, and there should be watertight closure. And we can use flap that intervening between these suture lines.
We need to ask the audience that what is the importance of, you just described the line of suture should be perpendicular to each other. Why we adopt that approach? And another thing, for going for the transvaginal approach is all the things you mentioned are very important, but if the vagina is not capacious or spacious, because you need to have a very wide vagina when you are performing surgery transvaginally. even if it is a distal fistula that is lying closer to the trigone or somewhere, but the vagina is not capacious. That usually happens in younger patients or when the patient who have menopause due to the deprivation of hormones can lead to the vaginal atrophy. So this is one of the very important point to note. So anyone, why we apply suture line should be perpendicular to each other? What is the importance of this thing?
Dr. Larif?
So because it causes a decreased chances of recreation of fistula. If we are applying horizontal to each other, there could be a chance of reoccurrence of that fistula more as compared to the perpendicular application of that sutures.
Dr. Maria can explain.
How the perpendicular suture line will help preventing further leakage?
Sir, I think the chance of decreasing reoccurrence of fistula is prevented by placing a tissue or fat in between the two layers of that repair. That will prevent the reoccurrence of the fistula.
Dr. Shirin can better explain because she is doing a marvelous job. She is in functional urology team and she is doing too many fistula repairs, especially transvaginal approach. So she can better describe for all of us.
By applying a stitches perpendicular, like for example, if we are repairing a vagina in vertical layer, we should repair bladder horizontally or vice versa. It's because of the reason that it will decrease the pressure. If we repair both the bladder and vagina in horizontal layer or vertical layer, that will tend to increase the pressure. And it will lead to failure of fistula and failure of healing as well. So this is one of the reasons.
The tissues and we have to do very fine and meticulous dissection. So we usually don't get too much flaps to overlap each other. So this is one of the technique that we can apply to reduce the tension in sutures. So one of the principles of good surgery is tension-free suturing. We always read about it. So this is why we go with this approach.
Transabdominal approach is taken for larger or proximal fistula. There is O'Connor techniques we most commonly used. We can do the advantage of transabdominal technique is we can do adjoint procedure if needed, like uterine implantation, augmentation, cystoplasty, urinary diversion, and hysterectomy. But the disadvantage is prolonged hospital admission, morbidity, use of blood transfusions, and postoperative infections. And we can use flaps like omentum, peritoneum, gracilis muscle, rectus abdominis, or seromuscular intestinal flaps. This is the schematic representation of transabdominal technique. We go dissect towards the fistula, excise the fistula's tract, and repair the bladder in 2 layers. And the flap or omentum flap intervene between these 2 structures, vagina and bladder.
We have also seen a very good result of bladder flap, like the bladder attachments on its pedicle or vascular supply. We have also applied it over the fistulous area, over the area of repair between the vagina and the bladder, and we have seen also good results in that.
Dr. Shiri, I just want few words from you. Like we have mentioned the use of grafts and flap as an interposition tissue.
Yes.
Technically, how easy or difficult you come across harvesting these flaps or grafts? Like when we are going transabdominal, omentum is there, but if we are going transvaginally, So does it technically challenge, like we have done few rectourethral fistula, so practically speaking, we come across difficulty using an interposition tissue like any muscle or like I think you might be doing Marsh's flap or anything like it.
Yes, exactly. Doing transabdominal approach, when we are doing transabdominal approach, we can take multitude of flaps, multiple flaps, different kind of flaps available. But while doing a transvaginal approach, the best flap we usually use is Marsh's flap. We can take it from one side as well, and we can take from both the labias as well. So this is one of the easiest thing we usually do when we apply flaps in case of a vaginal repair.
Sorry, I mean to say, practically speaking, is it easy or technically tough job to do it?
Technically, it's tough job if we are taking some far away flaps while doing vaginal repair. But Mauritius is a bit easy.
Taking flap is always challenging, being a urologist, but principles again same. We need to take care of the blood supply of the flap. Yes. And one more thing I would like to add here is we always pray that our patient is thin and lean when we are going for any surgery. But if you are planning for any taking any flap, then if the patient is chubby, then you are very lucky because you will get more tissue for mobilization and you will get more space for the mobilization.
Outcomes, the success rate either through vaginal or abdominal in experienced head is in excess of 85%. But it is better with transvaginal approach. If there is involvement of sphincter mechanism that carries a poor prognosis, that patient may leak or having incontinence post-operative period despite the closure of the fistula. Stress in urinary incontinence is the major post-operative problem, often mimicking recurrence. Next. Follow-up. We'll follow if there is any bladder dysfunction, lower tech symptoms, chances of future pregnancy, sexual dysfunction, and if there is any need of redo surgery.
So, Dr. Shiri, how often we have seen that our patients, which we are doing, they get pregnant in the post-operative period, or how they are doing in terms of sexual function and fertility rates?
Clinically speaking, after we usually follow our patients, and they complain of a very good overall psychological status, social status post-repair if they get completely dry. Yes, the thing which bothers them a lot is a sexual function and a need for like a future pregnancies. But since most of the patients who present to us do have hysterectomies done, I have seen only a few patients who has a residual uterus or someone who is very old age and having post-menopausal status. So they don't bother about future pregnancies. But sexual functions and future pregnancies, they usually bothers the patient a lot.
Okay.
But they usually complain about very good quality of life post-repair.
Okay.
We are now going to assess quality of life. Few of the residents are taking this project, and inshallah soon we will have evidence based on quality of life. And Shiri rightly said that we get most of the time gynecological fistulas where uterus was already taken out. So we don't know about their pregnancy status, while the sexual function, most of the patients that come to follow up are very satisfied, and we usually advise them preoperatively to avoid sexual function for at least 3 months. Dr. Abbas rightly explained about it. So
I think that there is need of studying the preoperative social status of these patients. For example, how many of these patients get divorced? What is their financial status? Obviously, after surgery, they become, when there is no leak, they get better. But what is the impact of this fistula on social life of these patients preoperatively? I think one can.
Exactly. We are also working upon the pre-op status. We are comparing basically the pre-op quality of life and the post-op quality of life. And these are the very real factors that influence their life. Most of the time, when we get vaginal fistula patient, they are obese.
Yeah.
The main cause of obesity may be poverty as well as the depression. And they usually get cut off from the society because of the continuous leakage of urine. few of the patients have reported divorce as well because of this thing. So we are collecting evidence, and soon it will be on paper.
Let us ask this question to our friends in Sakhar. GM, what do you say about this aspect? What should be the objective of VVF repair from a urologist perspective?
As a urologist perspective, our first objective will be to make the patient dry and with ease of voiding. And this is a secondary function that we should also address the social issues related with the disease of the patient so that the quality of life in the future for the patient should be better.
Right.
The take-home message is we should look patient holistically, and it is a disease which has impact beyond the fistula, and gives social and psychological support to the patient, and make a patient catheter free and dry as early as possible.
Where we are performing this procedure in patients such who don't have or who have minimal tissue left, because in recent past we had a patient, she remained admitted to us. She just had a chunk of trigone with which left ureter were attached and the right ureter was floating in the abdominal cavity after surgery. So we have done these procedure as well multiple times. So thank you so much, Dr. Hassan. It was very nice and very brief and precise presentation. Thank you.